Now we are streaming live on Facebook. For those who are just joining us on Facebook, welcome. This is the Blissness School and Music Portland launching a Thriving Music Business webinar. This is our first webinar that we're doing, and we're just going to kind of cover the basics. I'm super excited, a little bit nervous. Mara and I were talking earlier about my ability to break technology, so everything's crossed over here that this works out well, and we have some attendees coming on as well. So maybe we should wait a couple more minutes for attendees, and let's see if we have any questions. Do any of the attendees have any questions to start out with? I don't hear anything, so let's see, unmute.
Nathan Landis Funk is raising his hand, so that works. That's great. Yes.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh,
hi.
Neat. Hey, I'm from the East Coast, but I thought I'd tune in.
Hey, welcome.
That's awesome. Welcome all the way from the East Coast.
Did you have a question, or you just want to say hey?
No, a thing popped up, said the host would like to unmute your microphone. So I was like, oh, all right. So I just unmuted it. But so far, I do not have a question, but I'm sure a question will come up.
Cool.
And does everybody have their chat box to their right? If not, you can just click the chat at the bottom. That'll make everyone's lives a lot easier. Mostly for you, so that you can ask questions. If you have one that you don't want to forget, but you don't want to interrupt, then you can kind of just put that in there. Good. Mara sees it. Perfect. In fact, everybody, once you have that open, you want to just say hey in the chat box so that we can make sure that we can all connect there. Hey, Nathan. Yay, Jeffrey. I know that Philip is quite tech savvy, so I'm less worried about you, Philip. Hi, John. Okay, well, should we kick off? And then if people come late, they are more than welcome to be here with us. I just want to introduce myself as well. Hi, everyone. I'm Skylar. I have the fortunate opportunity to work with Music Portland. And to give you a little bit of information about Music Portland, if you don't know already, we are a trade organization that advocates for everyone in the music business sector. So our mission is to unite and defend and amplify everyone that fits into the ecosystem, whether that means musicians or people who own venues or anyone in the industry. Anybody that contributes to the incredible culture of music that we have in Portland. We want to make sure that you are being treated as somebody with a very formal career so that you can live it and give your all into it without feeling like it's just this fun hobby that you're calling your job. And if it is just your hobby, we want you to be able to take your hobby seriously too. A couple of things that we have been working on to show for that, for example, is putting loading zones all over the city in our loading zone pilot program, so that when you show up to play a show, if you're a musician or if you are an engineer that needs to load in, anyone that needs to take heavy things out of their car, put it inside of the venue, and then take it back out at the end of the night, you need a spot to do that. And you need it to be safe, where you don't have to worry about potential for cars to be in that same space or potential for tickets. You can load in, load out, and then go find your parking spot. So just a good example of the types of things that we are focusing on through Music Portland. And we are right now really focused on collecting data, because all of the efforts that we are trying to move forward with right now, if we aren't able to tell the stakeholders, the city, anybody that we need to have involved, if we can't bring them numbers to show the proof behind the pudding, then we just have a far weaker argument. So That being said, if you haven't filled out a profile yet, please, please, please head to musicportland.org and do that. And this is the basis of why we are collaborating with Melissa from Blissness School, because we don't want to just give you the fish. We want to show you how to fish and make sure that you can feed yourself. And that is what Melissa is here to do today. She works with Blissness School, which is an incredible organization that gives entrepreneurs an opportunity to love what they do without being bogged down by overwhelm. And I know that for myself, I have definitely been stopped in the entrepreneur path out of fear that I don't know how to do something and don't know who to ask. And so I will hand it off to Melissa, and she will explain a little bit more about that. But before I do, just to give you a little rundown of what you are in for, we're going to talk just about business in general and why it's important to have a team behind your business. We'll talk about holistic law. We'll talk about more about the important work that Melissa does and specifically dive into IP. We'll have an opportunity for some interaction, some quiz work. So if you have questions, Melissa will periodically at the end of little segments say, hey, does anybody have questions? If possible, hold your questions off until then so that we can make sure to address them and keep the flow going. But if you have an immediate question, pop it into the chat section and I will take care of the answers for you. Without further ado, Melissa.
Hey, Skylar, thank you so much. So beautiful. Skylar and I have crossed paths in our histories, and it's so much fun to reconnect with you here. And thank you. I so appreciate you, your work, and Music Portland. I am Melissa Jaffe. I am an entertainment attorney. I specialize in business law and intellectual property. So that means franchise law, starting a business, getting out of a business, contracts, and most importantly for everybody here, really entertainment law, which kind of encompasses all of that. I started out in the music industry. I've always been behind the scenes, and this has always been a passion of mine. So I'm so grateful to Jeff and Mara and Skylar for this opportunity. I just want to orient yourself. While I am a licensed attorney, I am not here being a licensed attorney. So I have another business called Blissness School. And that was something that I created because I could see after years of working with entertainers that they just weren't ready, quite frankly. By the time you get to an attorney, either you are in trouble or there's some other motivating factor. It's very expensive. It's very energetically consuming, time consuming. And a lot of the people that came to me, I wanted to help, but there was a gap. So I created Blissness School. And Blissness School is really just a place where I have personally married my passion for yoga. I'm a yoga teacher and a meditator with my passion for the law. I see them as being one and the same, quite frankly. And I think that a lot of the law is presented in this very high, heady, kind of over-the-top way that for a lot of creators and creatives can seem overwhelming. So this is just a place to break it down. Please do not claim that I am your attorney. If you want me to be your attorney, we have to have a separate discussion in a whole separate place. So yes, I will share a screen. Give me a second here while we get all set up. We have to go back a few slides, excuse me. Back here. I have to go all the way back. So I am a lawyer. Like I said, I also have Blissness School, and there's a whole bunch of other things I could say. I don't know what's going on. Here we go. So I'm licensed in Washington, California, Oregon. I work a lot in Texas. I've done all these great things. And I have all these different facets to myself, just like many of you. I know being in the entertainment, in the music business in particular, Sometimes you have to have a side hustle. So Skylar talked earlier about, are you a hobbyist or are you in business? So that's an initial question that is really important to answer. And you might wonder why. Just last week, we had tax day. Taxes are inevitable. Everybody has to face them. And when you are in business, that's your game. And so as a business owner, you get to deduct certain expenses from your tax bill. If you are not making money for 3 years, then you are considered a hobbyist. And so all of those expenses, all the money that you're putting into your business, that you don't get to claim that on your taxes. So if you intend to have a thriving business career, you do have to make money. And I know a lot of creatives kind of resist money, but Blissness School is about being very, very real. And so we're trying to marry both sides of your brain, right? The creative passion and then the brass tacks business aspects. So let's see if I can get to the next slide. Yeah, so this is my logo. This is Blissness School. This is something that we're going to talk about a lot more. You can see it behind me as well. The Blissness School logo says a lot for me, and the reason why we even have logos in the business realm is because they qualify as trademark. You can trademark a name, an image, a tagline. For businesses of any kind, your logo is really your stamp. It's what you are trying to project. In Blissness School, for example, you can see there are these two intersecting hearts, right? There's spaciousness. That's this idea that there's this open-heartedness, that there's something else that can inspire you. It doesn't have to be very closed off. And also in the center, you see, it looks like there's almost like a book opening up. So we designed this because at the center of everything we do, we want to have really good, valuable information. If you look at this another way, and I love my designer who is fantastic, you can almost see it's like birds taking flight. So at the bottom, you can see there are this kind of image almost of a bird that's working really hard to take flight. When birds get together in a group, they have more power. I really believe all that happens. I've taught yoga classes, meditation classes, and when you try any of that on your own, there's going to be some resistance, but when you get together in a nice supported group, there is an energy that you can experience that is very, very powerful. And then you can kind of get the wind beneath your wings and really start to soar. So that's what this logo represents. So I have a question up here. It should be, what is like IP, right? What is intellectual property? This is the part that I'm very, very passionate about. IP will come down here. It's a work or invention that is the result of creativity, such as a manuscript or a design to which one has rights and for which one may apply for a patent, copyright, trademark. So one of the things I do in Blissness School is just break down some of the lingo so that when you are ready to find your support, right? Find your lawyer, your accountant, your bookkeeper, your manager, your PR rep, whatever you need, you will be able to use the same words, get on the same page really quickly. So I'm just going to kind of go through the different types of properties so that you know what we're talking about. Personal property is something that you can hold. It's something that's manufactured. This is what things that we buy all the time, right? Earrings, a shirt, a cup, pens, phones, anything that you can really hold, that's personal property. In the legal world, we call it basically a widget and anything. Real property tends to be something that touches the land, real estate, okay? And then intellectual property, again, this is that spark of inspiration, right? Way back in the day, it used to be called divine inspiration. Now we call it a download, right? When you have this tune or an image or an impulse, and it could just be a feeling, it takes work to make it manifest. And this is a very spiritual part of the law. And the reason why I do the law is that it takes your efforts, your money, your time, your sweat, your tears, you know, your insecurities. And let's be honest, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, it is a really rough spot. It's messy. You have tons of judgment. Most of it is your own self-judgment. You have no idea what's going on. And I want to just share with you now, the secret is nobody knows what's going on. Like, we just put one foot in front of another and keep trying and keep plugging away. And if something works, go that direction. So there are no absolute hard answers. And I want you all to just take it easy on yourself and acknowledge that. Creatives have it, I think, particularly hard because they are using both hemispheres. And so you really have to cross, right, the creative part of the brain and logical part of the brain have to really mesh in order to make a music business go. So we're going to do a little poll now. We're going to see if this works. This is a new technology for all of us. So we're going to play a game. And there should be a poll that's launching shortly. And Skylar, let me know because I can't see what you're seeing.
So it should be launched now.
There we go. So we're going to leave this open. And this is the first slide. And this is the name the property poll. So we have here Hello Kitty. Hello Kitty was just a drawing. It has no mouth. It's intentional so that that was intentional. The idea is that children or whomever else could project whatever they wanted onto this little cat. This is one of the highest grossing items ever in the billions of dollars. You can find this, go out into any convenience store and I'm sure you will see Hello Kitty clips, mugs, everything, Pez dispensers in this situation. So if you all the participants could vote, is this a personal property, a real property, or an intellectual property? And so we'll give you a couple seconds here, make one of those selections, and then we'll go to the next slide. Okay, the Space Needle. This is our next, the number 2, what type of property is this? Is this personal property, real property, or intellectual property? And we'll review the answers after. So there's only 3 options. If everyone could just select one, I'll give you a couple more seconds. And then we'll go to the next. This would be, I should have numbered them. This is number 3, Star Wars. What are these? This is actually a collector's value pack. These 3 little toys were on eBay for about $150. Kind of let you know a little bit. Is that personal property, real property, intellectual property? And I'll let you select. We'll go to the next one, which will be number 4. Oops. This is just an image of people dancing. Is this personal property, real property, intellectual property? And the idea is that they're at some sort of a festival having a really good time getting down. We'll go to the last one, number 5, the Rolling Stones logo. So we'll give it a couple more seconds and then we can end the poll and see the results, hopefully. Cool. So we'll go back to the first one, Hello Kitty. Yes, you guys are right. This is personal property and intellectual property. Of course, you can see down the Hello Kitty registered trademark at the bottom means that it's a registered mark. The fact that this is a Pez dispenser, Pez also has some intellectual property on the shape of their good. So you can see how 2 properties can get together to make something even better, more marketable in our consumer consumer lands. And of course, this face, who could miss that? It's iconic. And so yes, this is both personal property and intellectual property, and we'll get more into how that exactly works in a couple of slides. The second one, once again, you guys nailed it. This is real property. It's definitely attached to the grounds. And this is also intellectual property for people who want to go and take images and put them on postcards or posters. They actually have to contact the owners of the Space Needle and license rights to do that. And oftentimes they will have to pay some sort of a royalty. So you can see how intellectual property is really valuable. Not only for the architect who created this and actually made it into a building, but for ongoing generations. It continues to create what we call passive revenue, which is important for anybody in business. It's something everybody wants to have, a stream of flowing income. The third one, once again, personal property and intellectual property, very, very similar to Hello Kitty. Star Wars is on everything. And there are so many different ways that this has manifested into intellectual property and personal property, from bed sheets to coffee mugs to Christmas ornaments. So you can see how this is generating quite a bit of income for this business. And some of this I just talked to generally with entrepreneurs. And in your situation, we really want to hit on the IP, because that is going to be one of your biggest, probably your biggest asset. This last one, is this, I'm not sure if I missed one somewhere in here. This is intellectual property in so many different ways. You can imagine the music that's being played is actually a property right. That is something we'll cover soon. And the video itself then becomes both personal property and intellectual property. A little tricky there. And then finally, the Rolling Stones. This is just intellectual property. Nailed it. But you can, of course, marry it once again with items and t-shirts. You know, you understand what I'm talking about. Okay, so I'm just gonna close that poll down. You guys did so well. And yeah, so intellectual property, let's dive a little bit deeper into what this is. So we start with copyright. Copyright is codified in United States Code 17. And this gives people the right to stake a claim on an image or a work of art that is fundamentally creative. The person who creates the work is called the author. We can, in Blissness School, which I guess I'll just tell you, we have two options for Blissness School right now. There's a group program where we kind of chat and mastermind and help hold each other accountable and really get tasks assigned and then accomplish those tasks. And then there's also the self-study course for people who are just DIYers, and it gets a lot more in depth onto what are these, how do you identify it, how do you use them, how do you go about building an actual business based on your IP, including contracts, entities, and how to negotiate, things like that. So copyright is really a bundle of rights. For musicians, there is the right to the underlying work. There is the recording of that work, which is also called a master. I'm sure all of you are familiar with that term. And then there's a right to perform, a public performance right. And then, of course, there are the distribution rights or the replay rights, which is really a big topic with PROs, especially in streaming media. All of this, I think we're going to try to maybe do another webinar that gets much more in depth. I could talk for the rest of the year about copyright alone for musicians, but I won't. The next kind of intellectual property right generally is going to be trademark. As I mentioned, it's the logo, the name, right? You can think of the Nike swoosh as the logo, the name Nike or Air Jordan as the name. All of these things are copywritten, registered with the USPTO, the United States Patent and Trademark Office, and a tagline, something like "Just do it." Then we have trade dress. Trade dress is something that you can identify. Somebody has a barking dog. I'm not sure if maybe you can all mute.
Don't worry, it's me. I'm muting. Hold on.
I'm surprised my dog's not barking. So trade dress is something that you can recognize just by looking at it, like a profile of it. It's a packaging. So keep that in mind. Patent is far more expensive, far more complicated, and far more valuable in the general business arena. These are for you audiophiles. If you think of a new way to produce a sound, typically these are going to be a physical item. The reason why is because it's very easy to patent those physical items. You'll see in the marketplace, there's like a new iPhone that comes out all the time, right? And so every little component, like the plug, right? There's a patent on that. And so the reason why people in business continue to update, especially people like Apple, their products is because it continues to exclude other people in the marketplace. Once you have a patent, no one else is allowed to use what you have unless they get a license. Copyright is going to be a weaker kind of a right. You can do a cover, for example, of a song, and you're going to get an automatic right to do that. Trademark, so copyright, generally, you go to the Library of Congress and you can register your copyrights, and that's roughly about $35-ish, very accessible. Trademark, you need to pick categories. That's roughly right now $250 a category. So you want to budget like $750 to maybe $2,000 for the trademark. Those are just for the fees. When you get to the patent area, those patents can get up to $150,000 just to file the patent. So you can see this is kind of order of value in the business world. Anybody can file their copyright with the Library of Congress. I believe we're going to have another webinar. I think we talked about having another webinar where we just go through and do that. We don't have enough time today. But that's meant to be very accessible to everybody. Again, this is something that just manifests from the moment of creation. Once you write it down, you record it, you snap that picture, boom, there's a copyright. There's been a misnomer that you have to like mail yourself something. That's not true. The best business practice that entertainment attorneys will tell you is register with the Library of Congress. That's the safest way to make sure you have that registration. Trademark, trade dress, I'll go through the USPTO and patent, the USPTO. And there you have to put in an application. It's like a driver's test. You could get it, you might not, but you never get your fees back. So just keep that in mind. You don't have to use an attorney to file for a trademark, trade dress, or a patent. But again, once you make this application, if you make a mistake, you could lose your money. So it's a cost-benefit analysis. And then finally, there is a right of personality, which I pulled out. It's actually a copyright, but this right of personality is your name, image, or likeness. And I put it in here because we're talking to musicians. So remember, if somebody wants to sponsor you, or if somebody wants to have a sponsorship with you, or someone wants to use your name, image, or likeness, all of that has value for you. And we talk much more in Blissness School about how to extract that value. But suffice it to say right now that there is value. Skylar, are there questions? I think something's popping up. So maybe we'll take a pause here.
Yes, there. John wants to know if you can register copyright in bundles.
Yes, you can. It's called a serial or a series. And so if you have an album and you have a whole bunch of songs, Yes, you can. And so I highly recommend that for musicians when I work with them and they're on a budget. Same thing with photographers. If you have a series and there's some way that it goes together, or even authors. Back in the day when authors would write series or serials, think of all these laws come from pre-internet times, right? So people would write articles and they would distribute them in serials. So you'd have to check the magazine once a month to like keep the story going. All of those could be registered as a serial, and that's what it's called, the Copyright Library of Congress.
Great. That's it.
Any other questions? That's it? Okay. Well, we'll do another poll now. So this is the name the intellectual property poll. So you can see in honor of Easter, we have the Hello Kitty Pez dispenser. Of course, there is a holiday focused one. So is this, so this should be the second poll. So I think I'm going to close this one because this one just, I think it should be the second poll, which is the intellectual property one. Copyright, trademark, trade dress. That one's personal property. Is there another poll? Poll number 2.
I only have poll number, oh, well, one moment, here we go. Hit it.
Cool, so name this intellectual property. We know that this is personal property because you can buy it and hold it and trade it and sell it and swap it, which will happen a lot this weekend for my child. And it has a value that's very important to her. So what kind of intellectual property is this? This is number 1. This is the Pez dispenser. Is this copyright, trademark, patent, or trade dress? And I'll give you a second to contemplate that, given our discussion. I feel like there should be background music. We'll put that in next time. The next one here, you have seen, this is the Space Needle. So once again, what kind of intellectual property is at play here? Copyright, trademark, patent, trade dress. And I think you can make multiple selections again, because as you can see, these rights, you bundle them, right? Oftentimes people say copyright is a bundle of rights. It's not just one thing, which is fundamental for artists to know, because when you are negotiating an agreement, you need to understand, right? I've seen musicians before, I've worked with musicians before that it's just like, yes, you get the copyright. It's like, slow down. Like, what does that mean? Is that the underlying work? Is that the master? Is that derivative rights? Do you get the right to put this thing on something else? Do you get the right to make it a Broadway musical? Those are derivative works. So you need to know what it is that you're engaging and trading in before you can effectively do so. And oftentimes you can have multiple different kinds of rights. The next image here, again, a little Easter nod to the Star Wars crew, and you can see it right here, right? Star Wars is the mark. Obviously, we have these characters who are both copyright and I'm going to say trademark protected as well. I used to work with LucasArts, and they are very fun because there's a lot of IP happening. But then you have these little plush toys and eggs and candies made in the shape of Darth Vader, and you know, it just kind of never ends. So what kind of intellectual property do you see here? And we'll go on to, let's see. This is the, this is the 4th. We've seen this before. What kind of intellectual property rights are kind of at play? Copyright, trademark, patent, and trade dress. And then 5 here. Good old Dave Matthews Band. We have a few different items at play. Oh. That was not supposed to happen. My apologies. Okay, and then we'll go to the next one. Coca-Cola. Is this copyright, trademark, patent, trade dress? I think, was this number 6? I think 7. This is a Nintendo, what used to be called a joystick. I'm not sure, somebody knows what this is called. A pad of some sort. But you see, this is something that practically every Christmas season, there will be something else, something you can run on, something you can swing with, something, and there's a reason that that happens. Because there's an entire intellectual property team for years before making sure that they can get the rights to this. No one else can. Big businesses like Nintendo, Adidas, Nike, what happens at that level of businesses is called patent wars, right? Maybe I just gave it away. Because everybody is kind of going in the same direction, and whoever files first knocks the others out. Sometimes you file a really big item just to keep other people from being able to make it to the marketplace first. I see there are some comments. We'll just finish up this poll. So this is the final one in our name, the intellectual property rights. These are all of my dear, dear friends, mentors. First, we have Graham Hawthorne. He is a drummer over here. He joins in for Blissness School music segments in particular, talks a lot about the realities of the music business, how stuff really gets done when you're a musician. He has worked with Paul Simon for years, traveling as the drummer, David Byrne. I mean, he just kind of knows everyone at this point. And then, of course, there's David Byrne, one of my mentors, and someone I've had the extreme fortune of being able to call a friend and a guide. And finally, this gentleman down at the bottom here is my friend and teacher, Ram Das, who I will go to see next week. Okay, so we'll close this out. And let's see what we've got here. So going back. Oops. I'm learning. Okay, so the Hello Kitty Pez dispenser, this definitely copyrights. Just the picture of Hello Kitty is copyright protected. You see trademarks here. Pez alone is registered in that kind of stylized logo that are the Pez's. You can see that it's registered because you have a circle R right there. That shows that it's a registered mark. Other people are not allowed to use it. And the same thing with Hello Kitty in pink. Again, there's that circle R. You'll start to see it all over the place now because when you have a registered mark, like I do with Blissness School, it's important to let other people know this is registered, please don't use it. That's especially important for entrepreneurs in the marketplace. I think equally as important for musicians. Dave Matthews Band is registered. Rolling Stones is registered. I mean, we could just spend a whole afternoon looking at the USPTO at all the registered marks with band names. Patent, sure, here in Pez, I'm sure Pez has a patent on its dispenser, the flip top, no doubt. And trade dress, again, because you can just see a Pez dispenser, an outline of it somewhere, and you know it's Pez dispenser. So all of those are protected marks. If somebody else were to try to take those, then they would have a lawsuit, right? And a pretty expensive one. The Space Needle, number 2. I'm not so sure this is copyright. Maybe the name Space Needle is copyright protected. I don't know if this is trademark protected. I would have to double check that. Patents, certainly, I'm sure there's a patent on kind of the construction of this mark, but potentially trade dress. Actually, I think there is a trademark on the Space Needle. So yes, that one, even though again, it's personal, it's real property, it also has this intellectual property rights attached to it. The third one, certainly copyright, I'm sure. Trademark, you can't see it, but I guarantee there's a circle R somewhere on the Star Wars packaging. If not on the back, it'll say all rights reserved. That includes copyright and trademark. I'm not sure that there's a patent in here anywhere. A patent is usually how something works. It's a non-obvious use of something. There are some specific definitions. We get a lot more into that in the DIY self-study course. And I don't see a trade dress in this one. Let's go to number 4, copyright. Yep, once again, the video itself is copyright protected. Even the people in here, although we don't know any of them, or at least I don't, they have rights of personality. And the music, no doubt, just by the virtue, I'm assuming that they're dancing to something, is going to be copyright protected. Number 5, so Dave Matthews Band definitely is a trademark. And it's also a copyright because it has been affixed and licensed to these various media. Those are derivative works. Let's just assume this one, I can't move that for some reason, was like a sticker. The next one here, I think it's number 7. This is actually trade dress, was what I was trying to show. This kind of curved bottle of a Coca-Cola bottle. It is protected by trade dress, so you could see it. This is not patented. There is another right at play when you get to intellectual property rights. It's called trade secret. Coca-Cola is probably one of the most notorious trade secrets available. They've decided not to disclose the recipe or the formula because that is only protected for a limited term. So they can get more marketability by not telling anybody, and definitely not publishing the recipe, by just keeping it a secret. That requires you to do nothing but keep a secret. So no registration is required. In fact, that's kind of anti the point. And of course, copyright does also come into play in just the display of the label. Nintendo, I don't remember which number we're on, so I'm gonna close the poll here. Somehow, show results. Here we go. Put it over to the side. This is a Nintendo joystick. This is a patent. This is an example of a patent. Again, practically every holiday season, Christmas in particular, there is some sort of a new device. That is because it is now patentable. And then that's when people really get to strike and get their share of the marketplace. I'll just move on because it's not so much at play unless somebody is making, I have worked with filmmakers who have played around with their lenses and created a different kind of lens that captures the visual in a much more dramatic way, a much more wide frame way. It hasn't been done before, so it's not necessarily novel. There's still a lens, there's still the design behind it, but it's non-obvious. Nobody has done it in that way before. And then this last one, these are versions of copyright. Of course, the images themselves have a copyright. So when you take a picture, the picture itself is going to have a copyright attached to it. But then the person who is being photographed has the right of personality. So that includes name, image, and likeness. So if you are just one of us, there's not a very high value attached to our personal a right of personality, but when you get to this level, there is a lot of right attached. It's a very high value. You can think like Michael Douglas has won a lot of various suits against the National Enquirer for taking pictures of him that he has not been okay with. As musicians, it's a right to just pay attention to. So we'll go to the next slide. So we kind of want to pull this. So I guess I'll pause here. Skylar, are there any questions? Because I can't see what's going on.
That was a Nintendo 64 controller, though. We did find that out thanks to Nathan.
Yeah, I don't know. But thank you for that.
We're all set.
So, right, how does business work? And so I have this Lego example here because, and let me come back to my notes to make sure I didn't miss anything. Got it. Okay. So how does business work? It works very, very slowly. And so if you are an entrepreneur and things are taking a long time for you, you're right on target, because you have to come up with the concept, right? This concept of a Lego, like there has to have a name. There are lots of rules around what is trademarkable. As I said, we go in great detail into this in Blissness School, the self-study guide. So you have to figure out, how do I create this intellectual property in a way that I can use as a basis to build my business upon, right? And so I see there's another something.
Yep. John just has to head out, and he's saying thank you and what he wants to hear more of at a later opportunity.
Well, thanks for joining. So these are Legos. It's really simple. They're just these bricks with these pegs that are attached to it. So then there's this idea that you have to create a template, an archetype. You have to go through the manufacturing. As musicians, this is recording, this is video, this is editing, this is sound rendering, this may be color if you have video. There's a lot that goes into creating IP that's going to be valuable to you. And again, as a business owner, if you're going to get in a music business, it helps to understand what image, like what's my brand? What do I stand for? And how do I use this? You can use this in social media marketing, which is what happens a lot now. And really taking the time to get very clear around what am I making? Who is my audience? These are the business aspects that musicians sometimes, right? Again, it gets back to that initial question. Are you a hobbyist or is this a business? And if it's a business, it merits contemplating, how are you projecting yourself? How are you being clear? How are you directing people onto this new thing that nobody has ever seen before, to instruct them why this is valuable to them and how it can make their life different or better? And those are deep questions that I invite you to ponder, because as in the entertainment industry, it matters. And then of course, eventually, like in the Lego brand here, you can see once people get it, they're like, oh, cool, I can use this to make a house. I can use it to make a plane. I can stick different parts of them. If I went into my child's room, we have thousands of these things, right? Because the sky's the limit. So I think we're just about wrapped up here. Oh, not yet. So intellectual property, especially for creatives or entertainers, it really comes down to, what is your street cred, right? Because this intellectual property, the copyright, the trademark, the trade dress, all of it, it doesn't necessarily convert into money. I mean, sure, you've picked up on that, but it does matter. So there's value that's attached to this. So really, this means, do people know, like, and trust me? If I put on, right, like jazz musicians who I've worked a lot with in the past, Graham, one of them, they don't go into a gig without wearing a tie, right? You have to kind of dress up. There's a certain image, there's a certain sophistication that happens. Sometimes you can go to a show which I have gone to Shuggy Otis, and the person on stage is so on something, I'll just assume alcohol, that like you can't hear them. And so is that professional behavior? Like, do people know, like, and trust that if they're going to invest something like a ticket, that they're going to get something like true entertainment? And that all converts into what we call goodwill. Again, this is like your street cred. This is a legal term, goodwill. And this is how you value your asset. People are going to be more inclined to sign you for a record deal or to align with you as a musician to promote their videos or their products if you have very high goodwill. Also, people will be able to forgive you, right? I have Toyota Prius in here. Toyota is a very reputable car company. They've made this car, the Prius. The Prius, unfortunately, at one point had a defect where cars were imploding, exploding, or like the brake wasn't working. It's incredibly dangerous. And they had to recall all of their Priuses. If they didn't have that high goodwill, it could have ended their company, right? I could put a more timely example in here and put like Boeing for these MAX 737s. So if people had faith, which they did in this case, that Toyota was actually making honest, reliable cars, then they forgave that minor defect of implosion or spontaneous combustion or brake failure. And it's still one of the highest selling cars. They were able to recoup not because of anything other than their goodwill. This is another form of goodwill as musicians, right? You have a brand, you have an image. Willie Nelson is very open with his pot smoking. He's a huge marijuana advocate. He's very natural. He's very to the earth. And you see this as a brand image that they really play. I have in my home a poster, a Willie Nelson poster, that is an image of Willie Nelson made of these component parts. And some of them are a little pipe. Some of them is actually marijuana leaves. But this is who he is. And he doesn't really hide that. And he finds as a musician that he can share that, and people not only forgive it, but they like it. After his shows, people go on the tour bus and they smoke. It's great. Ozzy Osbourne is another person who has kind of made his image, his goodwill around just being a total nut, right? Like lining up ants and snorting them as if they were cocaine, biting the heads off of bats, getting arrested many, many times. Like it's just not something that has really upset him. And quite frankly, it's built his brands. They have they had a series, right, Meet the Osbournes or something like that. Like these are derivative works that are based on their brands. Another one over here is David Lee Roth, who has kind of created an image of a party guy, right? Andrew WK, like whatever. Like there's plenty of people who you can make anything you want to be your brand, but then stick with it. Lady Gaga, Taylor Swift, it continues. And that's kind of where we're at. Does anybody have any questions? So this is where you can find me if you have other questions. Blissness School. This is my law office website. We're on Facebook and Instagram. And of course, you can always email me.
And Melissa, where can they find the recording?
You will get the recording emailed to you.
That's it. Any other questions?
So if you have any questions, this is a really great time to share them. If not, you can always reach out and kind of ask questions. I highly, highly, highly highly recommend that you consider getting together with other musicians. What you're going through is not unique to you. And what I found is truly when you get together with other people, you have access to greater ways of doing things. You can often cut time on just reproduction. You can find that somebody else understands how to use that program that you don't yet know, or maybe they even have a license that they can share with you. And that's what we do in community. And then if anyone's interested, again, Blissness School has group programs where I really kind of take you on a path of holding you accountable. So we have weekly meetings where you have homework and you have to get it done, just like you were in business, because you are in business. For those of you who are DIY people and want to just get this information and cull it over, you can always sign up for the Blissness School online course. Just to let you know, as an attorney, my initial consultation rates are around $300 to $500. That's very standard for the business, especially in LA. It sometimes can be even more. The entire cost of Blissness School is a fraction of that. So it's very accessible.
Yeah, one thing, this is Mara, and thank you so much for that. That was amazing. I will say that we will post the recorded video in the member section on Music Portland. So it's another reason why, if you are an artist or a business and haven't yet filled out your profile, to get in there and do that. That data is super important, and we want to keep adding value and acknowledgement of you helping us in that way.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. There's a lot of information. You can see I can just talk and talk and talk about all of this. Really, I feel like I've had clients who, for trademark, for example, I'll get text messages at 9 at night. I think I've almost read the entire trademark manual. And I want to encourage you all, please don't do that, because it's not meant to be something that you ingest. It's like if you had a map and you were going into uncharted territory, it is Sisyphusian to try to memorize the map. Instead, it's really helpful to have that map and use it as a tool so that as you start to go along your journey, you can orient yourself and really look at your business as a journey. It's just one foot in front of the next. You're going to have questions, and you deserve the support of people who know more information than you do. Don't feel like it's outside of your budget. Don't feel like it's kept separate from you. It's made for you. And really all of us here, Music Portland and I, are so committed to helping you, right? I know that there are a lot of startups that get like kind of secret, kind of tips either on the golf course or at the gym, or they, go to lunch. I don't know if you guys realize that, but that is happening. And we want to make sure that you have access to that kind of support too. So please don't try and do it alone. Don't try to become a lawyer. Please do not try to become an accountant, and just seek these resources that are available, because we all believe in you and we know that you're going to succeed. That's all I got.
Absolutely. Thank you again so much, Melissa. This is so helpful. We'll be sharing all of the amazing options that people have with you on our Facebook page as well.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Have a great day.